Ever, I think today we've got a few things to talk about. So we're going to talk about Compound Interest, the strategy simulation game coming out later this year on Steam now. But also, we're going to be talking about how the demo went over the course of the last week and kind of where we're going from here. I don't see any reason why not to just jump right in, right? Let's talk about it. How'd the demo
Let's talk
go?
about it. The biggest thing I think that went well was that people liked it
Yeah.
as much as we did, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
The people who liked it cherished it dearly is what I felt. And that's good,
Yeah.
because that means that we're on to something.
So let's take a look at the game then, huh?
I think it's quite transformed. Does not look at all like the demo, because after all that playing through, we had exactly what had to go. Let's go.
Oh, hey, this is Marshall from the future. Or the future from the stream, but it's still the past for you. I'm here to explain what we changed in the UI. The first thing is that we adopted more icons to make the menu less overwhelming. It used to look like this. Now we've embraced this crew menu. They're selectable from here, rather than from along the bottom, and you can even make new teams on the fly by clicking and dragging. Pretty neat. Good job, Evrim. On the top, we've still got leads, reputation, and a new market tab. We'll come back to that later. For now, when your team is on the move, there's a trail to remind you where they're going. And when you've got your teams all the way across the map, you can zoom out to see them all. You might remember that we had a menu in each location, but now you'll have to actually interact with the scene. Here I choose the owner of the bar and select trade. He's selling booze for $4. I wonder if my team has seen a better price somewhere else. Well, how about that market tab? Now you can choose a good and see the prices. I hope it hasn't changed too much since the last time I was there. Well, that's a quick rundown about what's new. There's still a lot more to do, but thanks to all your feedback, we've come a long way. For now, I'll throw it back to past Evrim and I to continue to talk about some other changes that were made, and a little bit about the story and world. See you.
So one thing, you can immediately see that these guys are the ones that belong to your story that you're playing out right now. That was not clear before, and as the streets got busier with the changes that we made and there's fights going on around and whatnot, there's a real sense of chaos, but it's not informative chaos in that you don't know who am I dealing with. You want to immediately always be driving the player's attention to what they're supposed to be looking at. Now you have all these 4 pips. You can see that these guys are looking at each other. There's some action going around.
Yeah.
And when he says, oh shit, you're like, yellow pips. Those are the guys that I'm freaked out about right now.
I love that this is a part of the experience where you zoom into this moment and you say, oh God, right? I'm in combat. I'm on the street corner. I need to quickly assess who's around and what is the threat level. And threat assessment becomes such a key part of the game. And we're going to choose to get them. And they turn red, so we know that we're fighting these guys. That's great.
Yes.
These guys are stealing my stuff. Hey! The movement is great. And having the movement like this, so we see where we're going.
Yes, that helped so much. I really underestimated its effect, but seeing where you're going and be very clearly communicated about it makes like the walking over there feel a lot more substantial. It's a lot more connected. I really liked how that turned out.
And we just had a disturbance as well. So what we're doing right now is I'm just walking through the streets, right? And by walking around, I bump into certain activities that are like a random encounter. And there's different ways to proceed through those. And I managed to calm things down between a street fight that was about to break out. And because of that, I can get some reputation or potentially get some money, things like that.
Major thing that changed, I think, since the demo itself as well, is we're now really team focused. We have actually integrated that quite a bit better.
Yeah.
There's an active team that you have chosen and they are at a particular location and you can merge and split them apart into different teams, etc. That is much tighter. And the focus is always on the team as well. So Marshall just split it up into 2 groups. So now you look at the map and it's pretty immediately obvious, I think, hey, these are the teams that we have. And we're splitting them apart this way, etc. Visually, it became a lot clearer where your guys are, which was something that we were really struggling with.
And now we've got more interactions as well. More of these that are happening in the scene that makes it so that players need to be engaged somehow. You can move around, right? You just go everywhere you want to, but you're going to be constantly stopped up as you have to interact with the scene in order to proceed, which I think is the right feeling to have.
We don't want you going from one end of the town to the other end with no disturbances. This is the Warriors thing, right? For you to go from Brookhelm to Biz it should feel like a battle. It should feel really like, oh, I have to carry this very important thing through the city at night. Well, better come up with either your own security or sneak your way out. It should really feel real and hard. So another thing is like when you focus on here, the icons on the left part are sort of faded. So you have a a more slight look on what's around you. You can see people crossing by over there, other crews that might be following around. That's nice, I think. But it's not obtrusive either, which was something that we were trying to get rid of. Make it clear really what you're supposed to be looking at on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And utilize icons more to save real estate for what matters. One thing that I really like and that we've talked about before is that the idea in the world itself, what's happening when you are looking at the team view is that you are listening to the radio from that team. Right? And that team is describing the scene to you. You are dedicating additional attention to that. And while the rest of the world still goes on, you are in one way or another looking really closely. And I think we've taken lessons from the playthroughs that we've had, from feedback and things like that. Do we talk a little bit about where we see development going? And by that, I mean, let's talk about the things that we think this game needs in order to be ready for release.
Yeah, so one major thing that we are going through right now is the UI and UX. After doing all the playtesting, it was pretty clear to us which directions we should be going around that and what's on the horizon. This was figuring out what's not necessary, cleaning it up, destroying all the systems that we know that we don't need or we don't think we care about, and trying to just bring it down. So we tore a lot of things down, and now we're rebuilding them in a way that feels a lot more fluid to play, a lot clearer and less oppressive visually in terms of information density. That's one major thing. The other is that the teams, we want it to be more teams focused. We want to make sure that you're operating as individual squads and all the other groups are also operating in that same way as well. So you feel like there's some kind of levelness over there, right? It's in progress. I think it's, again, going quite well, but it's continuous improvement.
What are some of the things that we were like, oh, wow, we really want to include this or have these kinds of things in as well? So, for example, like the support slot with an ambush. Maybe we can talk about what that means as we're actually in an encounter right now. We have a support slot here.
What we want to do is that when you are going around the city and doing these things, it never feels so one-on-one. We want to bring a bit more life and a bit more chaos. A big way of doing that, of course, is just making more people participate in the story. So for the different stories that we're going to build further down the road, we want to have situations where you could be walking down the street, and even if it doesn't materially concern you, you might be recruited to join in, right? To either find out what's going on, learn something that you didn't know about, or you are coming in support of somebody else that is in trouble, and you have a good relationship with them. For you to be able to exercise all of these, the events simply have to involve more than two parties. We had this, for example, from an earlier design of the dice game, where you go around on the streets and there's these guys that are playing dice. There's like two groups playing dice, and then you can come in as a third, and then you can do some things to either push somebody out of the game or attack a certain party. And based on the relationships of those two, they might gang up on you instead, spoiling your plans, etc. So the three-way interactions all of a sudden become a lot more complex and exciting. And we want to keep writing more of these kinds of situations to see how we can make even the small, tiny, mundane, the Pokemon battles, like a bit more lively and interesting, right? That's a big part of direction that we want to go for.
We have a question here. This is a really cool question as well, which is, how is the end game? Is it more run-based, or are updates going to keep the end game alive? And I think we can talk
Yeah,
about that, right? I think
yeah.
that's
I can start building the scaffolding and maybe you can take it on further from there.
sure, hit it.
It's We talked about this briefly before, I think, but the earlier discussions that I was having with Marshall was figuring out, okay, if we have this crazy game engine where everything is happening all the time simultaneously in the same way for everybody, what stories can you do in that, right? What kinds of stories that you wouldn't be able to tell in more of a linear game fashion that you can tell in here? You can try to be a full sandbox story generator type situation in the way that RimWorld mostly is, especially in the base game, or Kenshi or Dwarf Fortress, right? Like all of those can generate amazing stories, but they don't really guide you at all. So one thing that we wanted to think a little bit about also with Marshall's tabletop RPG background is how can we construct a really good narrative that's not just purely randomly generated, it's procedurally generated. So then I was thinking what could be a midway is we can just make big things happen to the world and think about how all of these characters and factions and regions in the city might react to this thing happening. So these are very large cases like the district police for Milton Financial wants to barricade the entire district off from the rest of the city.
Yeah.
That's a big event. And that is something that we don't really have to script too much for. We can just change the behavior of the police such
Hmm.
that they patrol the edges of the border and they encounter whoever they encounter and tell them you cannot enter, right? We can do this, and it will completely change the way that every other gang and every other region in the city is able to react to the situation. It is that the police will now control the flow of goods going in and out, right? So, another event that we can do is make the financial district start buying out the stocks of all supermarkets prior to this lockdown so that they can fortress in themselves into that region. We want to make sure that the players can actually interfere with the police's capability to blockade the district, either by pure sheer willpower or by their political allegiances that is outside of the financial district. Right? I'm giving these as examples, not as literal things that we're gonna do, but
Hmm.
we want to operate in that kind of major decision, major outcomes,
Yeah.
because we have all of these connected systems around it. So the game is going to have two layers. One is what you're seeing Marshall play right now, interacting with the city, doing basic tasks and whatnot. The other layer is going to be the story layer, where we're going to have all of this web of events, major changes that are happening to the world that you as a player will have to find out how to react to. And that means that for an end game capability, we will have major goals that are spread around throughout the game. You will not be able to achieve every single one. You will not be able to go through every single story, and you will not be able to hit every single win condition because they're going to be simply very varied. You have no choice. We want to have the big and the major and the delightfully scripted, and we want to put it into a world where you are not forced to experience things in any particular way. You simply get to choose to experience certain things because you feel like that's the way that you want to interact with the city, and the city responds to you. That's the grand vision.
I wanted to answer the question really quickly. Is it that there's more end game or is it it's run based? And I would say it is run based. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right? You are
yeah.
running through, I think in our event calendar we have about a month. And in that month, certain things are likely to happen, not guaranteed, likely to happen. And whether or not they do happen depends on certain prerequisites which the player can affect. And your level of interaction, your push on the world can shape certain events from happening or from not happening, and that those lead to different outcomes. I don't think that the game at any point says you win, right, or success, but it's that you are running through the same month and you get to affect things and find the different endings that are possible from that.
What I want to add on top of this really quickly is that we also want to forego the idea of player centricity a little bit as well.
Absolutely.
We don't want every single story to revolve around your presence. In fact, we want things to revolve without your presence, such that your presence makes a outcome that matters, right? An outcome that actually makes you think, oh, this happened because I did this in the second week. That fucked those guys over, and they weren't able to do the other thing, which means that the ship landed safely in the harbor type thing, right? We want really a strong sense of causality in the actions that you take, but not just your actions. You assisting other factions to accomplish their goals, coming back to you later down to help you accomplish your goals or stop you from doing so. We want to have those things built in by means of having these large events, but we want to keep the possibilities as large as possible, basically. And again, really not make it about the player, but about what happens also without them.
Yeah. What's the goal? What's the goal in the game? The goal is to shape the city how you want to see it shaped, to help the factions that you want to help, to harm the factions that you want to harm. We intend to have different backgrounds that make it easier or more difficult to do one or the other, right? That have forces within the background that pushes you in a certain direction. It also explains why certain things have happened. The goal of the game is, at first, to experience the city and see what's happening, and then in the course of a few playthroughs, understand it to the level that you are able to see the world as systems which you can push and pull through manpower, through reputation, through goods and services, through all of these levers that you get to flip. That's the goal of the game. And then it's not the first time that you achieve all of your goals. Might not be the 5th time. But in time, when you understand it enough, you will be able to push it and to make the world yours.
Same major events that are predestined to happen, with everything else fuzzy in between. But those little walls that we put into things to make things balance against each other, we hope will create stories that are not possible in those other very expansive games.
Yeah, we're walking the fine line there. We're making the active choice that it isn't an endless playground. There's a storyline that you get to uncover. Certain characters might be under threat, their lives. You might not know that the first couple of times you play, but after that, you're able to understand that it's coming and save them. So like the alternative paths in which things can happen and the alternative outcomes that come from that, some of them being really quite impactful on the city, having a huge effect, whether or not someone survives a certain encounter or something like that. But that all of this is modulated by the individual factions' abilities. It is a string of events in the sense of there is an events calendar I have written, and that there are events in that calendar that correspond to certain storylines. It's just that there are also all of the alternative events that could happen with that, right? I'm being very coy talking about it, but I should feel a little comfortable just to mention it because, come on, there's so much more that's going to change. But for example, there's a certain faction in the game that wants to establish a distribution center. The distribution center is a big deal. If they do it, the citizens in the city will love them because they're distributing goods for free. If that distribution center is created, that means that the faction that created it has been buying enough goods from the producers that they're able to supply their own distribution center. What would happen to all the stores in the city if a distribution center suddenly opened up? Where are they getting their goods? The way that I think about the events in this game, the way that Everman and I think about the events in the game, is much more similar to this, where it is, what are the knock-on effects, right? The distribution center, you didn't stop it from getting opened, or you helped it get opened. What happens if you are protecting stores? Yeah, and your major income was from protecting stores. You need those stores to sell things. And if they don't have things to sell, you're screwed. Because as much as you beat them up, they cannot pay you. So you see, this is the way in which I want to think about how the story of New Sterling plays out and how the player interacts with the world. It's like, no. This isn't a story about individuals. This is a story about factions. This is a story about goods and resources going through a city. What happens, right? What happens when guns come in, right? Firearms are a big deal. Lethality is a big deal. Because I wanted to explore what happens if the player interacts with factions who have the ability to make guns, and then they do it. And they make guns. And now you have unleashed Pandora's box. Because now there's an item in the game that allows people to die. There is a limited number of people in the city. And if you choose to go down the path to have guns be involved, to have lethal weapons be involved, oof. I mean, how long until the city's empty? And is that an outcome you want? Could be. Right? Maybe you just kill every other faction. Maybe every other faction kills each other. But that's the systems level events interactions that I want to have in this game. And so that at the end of the playthrough, you say, oh, God, the distribution center, it opened and I had all these stores I was protecting couldn't pay me anymore, so I had to attack the distribution center and it was heavily guarded. I would like there to be many different ways to do these interactions. For example, the distribution center that I was mentioning, it distributes goods. It distributes goods to you too. We have a system in the game which you deliver goods to people. If you spend your time just taking the goods from the distribution center and then bringing them to the store, then the store will sell them and then you get the profit. So you don't even need to just destroy the store. You can think of another way around it. This is really at the core of my tabletop role-playing game days. My favorite thing about tabletop role-playing games is writing a scenario, putting it in front of my players, and then finding out their most batshit ideas about how to get around whatever obstacle it is. You put a 10-foot fence in front of a player, right? And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, they're going to make the 11-foot ladder. They're going to get over. And then they say, no, we have to cut through it. And in your head, you're like, no, there's an obvious answer. Just find a ladder that's tall enough. They're like, no, we can't find a ladder. We have to cut through it. And then they just go on their own side quest to cut through the fence. That's what I love about tabletop role-playing games, and that's what I'm trying to have some amount of in this game, is to have enough systems where you can find a certain way around different things. To play information against other factions, to use where they find their resources and play it against them. These kinds of things. So yeah, that's why I struggle to call it events. That's why I struggle to call it, even to really call it storylines. There are possibilities which can open up. That is what is cooking. And that all of these options, you will be able to reshape the city of New Sterling. All right. I don't think there's anything else at the moment. I'm going to close up the stream. I think we had a really cool discussion. Subscribe on YouTube for more video updates. I intend to have stream clips, for example, for this one, as well as some videos about the world and story. So I'm going to call it there, and I'm going to thank you all very much again, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.